Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that others should bow down to them because they're the center of the universe. And in today's episode, boy, oh boy, guys, OP tells a tale about an insane Karen who demands OP make her a baby. I hope you enjoy the lineup today. Don't shake your heads too hard. And hey, story submissions can be sent right here. I'm a 29-year-old female, and I hesitate to call this girl, also a 29-year-old female, a friend because I really don't know her that well. We met through a local group for a hobby we both had. We hung out a couple of times, texted a bit, but we weren't really close friends, and I had no idea that she was this entitled. So during one of the times we were hanging out to work on the hobby, she complains that all of her friends were busy on the day of her actual birthday. But she really wanted to celebrate that day instead of waiting for the weekend or whatever. She sounded so down and I felt so bad, so I told her that I would take her out. It was only a couple of days away, and I was on a super tight budget. But another one of our friends from the hobby group and I took her out to lunch at a cute cafe, where we decided to treat her to a full meal. We got her drinks, desserts, you name it, and she griped about the food the entire time. I shrugged it off, and afterwards, the three of us went back to my place for some ice cream that I made sure fit all of her dietary restrictions. So while I'm dishing up the ice cream, she disappears into my bedroom and she shut the door. Other friend and I were confused, but we thought maybe she was having a wardrobe malfunction or she was taking a phone call. So we let her be for about 10 to 15 minutes before checking up on her. She didn't respond when we knocked, so we let ourselves in and we found her sitting on my bed with her arms crossed, with tears streaming down her face. A 29-year-old grown woman, to remind you. We asked what was wrong, and she said she was upset that it took us so long to check up on her, and nobody seems to care about her on her birthday. Now at this point, I was getting pissed, but I simply wanted to keep the peace. So I explained why we did not immediately run after her, and that we do care about her. That's why we took her out on her birthday. After some groveling, we got her to come out for ice cream, and before she left, I gave her a small gift that I sewn by hand. Tight budget, remember? And she didn't even say thank you. She looks it over and said, "Nah, I don't like the color, but maybe I can dye it." Needless to say, we didn't speak much after that. Yeah, so with that type of attitude, guys, I can see why her friends were all busy on her special day. Like, I wouldn't give any of my time to someone like that either. A 29-year-old toddler is what she is. And listen, some toddlers are actually better behaved. But seriously though, some people are just too darn ungrateful, guys. And the fact that she ran into Opie's room, cried, saying that she didn't feel special on her own birthday is ridiculous. Like, how spoiled are you? So I work in food service, and I've seen my fair share of entitled parents, but this mother is probably the worst I've ever encountered. First off, she walks in with a party of 20. No reservation on a Saturday night. As annoying as it is for me as a host, it's such a regular occurrence that I figure she might not be that entitled. Oh, how naive I was. So I told her that she had to wait for 15 minutes because we had to get a table ready for her. She then told me that was fine, but she needed 2 separate tables because they were there for her daughter's 15th birthday, and her friends wanted to sit away from the adults and her little brother. She wanted the adults and her son to sit in a booth specifically. She also wanted 2 separate checks. Red flags start going off in my brain. So I set up their tables and seat them down. And not even 2 minutes after they've been seated, my manager and I start getting complaints from customers, saying that the 15-year-old and her friends are disturbing other customers. They're yelling, roughhousing, knocking into people's tables, making obscene comments, and invading the personal space of other customers eating around them. My manager very politely goes over and asks them if they could quiet down a bit, additionally wishing the 15-year-old a happy birthday. She was extremely lenient. She didn't even mention the fact that they were physically harassing other customers. And now we get to the little brother. The kid was no older than 5, and his mother completely ignored him the whole time she was there. So as expected of a neglected kid, the 5-year-old spends the entire evening running around the restaurant, yelling like he was getting his limbs sawed off, with forks and knives in his hands. The kid would rummage through my host desk when I was dealing with other customers, and subsequently stealing kids' menus and throwing the crayons at random customers and staff. I kept telling him to please stop doing that, but I was very busy trying to multitask, and I was unable to put an end to the bad behavior. Well, it turns out that at the end of the meal, the kids all told their mom about getting a talking to for their behavior, and up to the host desk comes Super Karen to the rescue. The woman screams at us, reminding us that we're supposed to be a family-friendly restaurant, and it's in the name, for crying out loud. And I want to note that it's not. We're an Italian food establishment. The woman says that that means we have an obligation to accommodate and take care of her family, to make sure they have the best possible experience, which she didn't have. Once she found out we tried to control her kids, she demands her whole party's meals comped. My manager and I politely told her that her kids had been making so many customers very uncomfortable, and that we were making sure that every guest feels good while eating here. Of course, that's when she pulls out the big guns and says that she knows the owner, that she's been a loyal customer for years, but now that her daughter's birthday has been ruined, she'll be contacting the owner to get all of us fired, and she would be taking her business elsewhere. None of us missed her service, especially the server who she tipped nothing after 3 hours of serving them. My goodness, guys, like, I really wonder if she was waiting for something like that to happen so she could demand her meals comped. Like, I wouldn't put that past her. I also love the fact that she said that their job is to give customers the best experience possible. Well, ma'am, we're trying to, but your kids are the reason why other customers aren't having the best experience possible. It's not all about you. And this person comments, I worked in a restaurant for 8 months, and parents would do this all the time. Their kids would headbutt me while I was walking with extremely heavy trays and high chairs, and the parents would do nothing. And I couldn't do anything. I just had to pray that one wouldn't make me completely lose balance. Entitled parents are the absolute worst customers to deal with. Ain't that the truth, guys? And while we're on the topic of bad parenting, listen to this story. I'm at the library today, trying to get some work done where it's supposedly quiet, when a mom walks in with her 4 kids, one of which is already having a meltdown, screaming that she doesn't want to be in the library. And I'm thinking, great start. So mom plops down at an open computer and she starts doing something, while her kids that aren't freaking out start climbing on chairs and tables, being annoying in general. Except for one little boy, who quietly takes a book off the shelf, sat down on the floor in a corner, and starts reading. That's when one of her daughters thought that it was a great idea to stand in the middle of the library, bright red face, screaming at the top of her lungs. She actually wasn't saying anything, just high-pitched wailing. The kid looked about 6 or 7, so it's not like I'm talking about some toddler that can't be reasoned with. Her mom ignores her the whole time, and after a few minutes, people are getting visibly angry, and someone goes and talks to the librarian about it, who agrees and politely asks the woman to collect her crotch goblins and leave, as her daughter is disturbing everyone around her. And that's when Karen loses it. She screams, "How dare you tell me I can't be here? Look at her, she's a child. This is what children do." The librarian asks her to leave again, and Karen downright refuses to leave. And that's when the librarian told her that the police will be called, and the woman shouts, "Good. Call the damn police." Now at this point, if I hadn't needed the computer I was on, I would have left because this idiot's clearly not gonna fix the situation with her kids. The woman's just glaring at everyone around her who looks in her general direction, not even actively using her computer anymore. So I put in some headphones, which barely drown out the small banshee who's still screaming, going on for 10 minutes straight at this point. People all over the library are packing up and leaving. So fast forward another 15 minutes, the Karen's just browsing Facebook now, still shooting daggers at anyone who doesn't approve of her negligent parenting style. And her daughter is now laying in the prone position, and she's flailing and screaming herself hoarse. At this point, that's when 2 uniformed police officers walked in and asked the librarian to point out the woman causing the disturbance. And with that, Karen suddenly has a look of terror on her face. The cops quickly walk up to her, tell her to collect her kids and come with them. And Karen actually shakes her head no and tells them that she's not coming with them. And that's when one of them says, "We're taking you out of here one way or another." Hearing the officer say that, she gets up, grabs her purse, walks to her daughter who's laying on the floor, and drags her daughter by the back of her shirt, choking her for a bit before yanking her to her feet. That's when the officer says, "Hey, take it easy on the kid. This is bad enough for you already." The other 3 kids follow, and one of the cops takes the screaming little girl's hand and he walks her out. I didn't follow them outside, though I really wanted to see the outcome. The look on her face when the cops came for her was priceless though, and she asked for it. Yeah, guys, I have no idea what this woman was thinking. Like, how? How in your mind did you think it was okay to let your children scream at the top of their lungs while in a library? Like, was it really that hard for her to sit down all the kids and give them a little talk beforehand saying, okay, so we're about to go into a library, a place where you need to be really, really quiet, and everybody needs to use their inside voices, okay? Like, just whisper. But hey, if everybody knew how to act, you wouldn't get these wild stories where people really think that nobody else in the world matters. Yep, I don't give a damn about my screaming kids. I need to check Facebook. So my ex-friend is commonly called a Karen. She's very entitled, and she has a bad habit of actually screaming for managers over the smallest things. I've watched this 35-year-old woman scream, "Get me the manager or I'm calling the cops," at a restaurant because the waiter accidentally gave her iced tea instead of sweet tea. Like, what are the cops gonna do? So I don't want to use the name Karen because it's overused already, so let's just call her Emily. So Emily and I used to be friends. I can't remember why. She comes off as sweet and caring, but she's the most entitled person that I've ever met. Emily also struggles with fertility, and she's desperate for children. She tried to adopt a child, but because of her mental health problems and unstable lifestyle of hotel hopping, she was denied. She doesn't have a job, she's technically homeless, and her boyfriend is a 21-year-old D-bag, and she tends to hoard animals that all die in unusual circumstances. Her last cat died mysteriously at only 2 years old, when it was perfectly healthy. I was there when she adopted him, and I heard the vet state that he was healthy. But suddenly he dies, and she claims that it was heart disease, and then claims it was a seizure, then claims kidney problems, and then says that he somehow flew across the room and purposely aimed into a wall. So yeah, a little suspicious. My other friend did call animal control on her and found out that she has 6 rats, 5 hamsters, 1 dog, and 4 cats. She claimed that all of them were emotional support animals and that they were medical equipment, and by taking them away, it would be against the law, which is a big yikes. She's not well. So a while ago, she was saying how desperate she is to have kids, and she was talking about looking for a surrogate. She wanted someone to carry a child for her with a list of demands for the surrogate. All for free, mind you. Now, all but her know that nothing is free. Human incubators isn't a free service, and mistreating someone in that job is a good way to be in a legal battle. Now, I just listened because, well, me explaining the truth to her would be like me placing my head in a garbage disposal. Completely pointless and 100% painful. So I make a comment how one day, uterine transplants might become more successful and more common, and how great that would be. I bring it up because I'm not entirely in love with my uterus. I don't plan on ever having kids, and I'm not against the idea of uterine donation, but that's not the point. Sorry. So with that, I make the joke of me wanting to donate my uterus to someone who needs it, and deserves it, since I have no plans on using its baby-holding abilities. That's when Emily says, yeah, then I would have you give me your uterus so I can finally have a child. Now I thought she was joking, but it turns out she wasn't. Emily and I had a falling out, thank goodness, and I thought we could just part ways quietly. But she had other plans, and here's the crazy thing. She posts all over Facebook, and she pings me saying that I had made a legal agreement to give her my uterus, or to be her surrogate. Now, never once did I say such things, and now she has her friends coming after me, harassing me in direct messages for giving her false hope and mental anguish. Emily's also threatening to sue me for my uterus, and for causing extra trauma by not following through. And at that, I'm just confused and baffled. I'm also curious as to how she can afford a lawyer if she can't afford food for her many animals. Like, are lawyers suddenly cheaper than I recall? But also, the last time I checked, you can't be sued to give up a body part, especially if no legal agreement was ever made. I'm also lucky to have a lawyer family friend, and he's agreed to help me set up a meeting with a colleague of his if this turns serious. It's doubtful it will, but Emily's definitely having a public meltdown over our relationship ending. Now, I wish I was lying, but this person is not mentally sound, and she's threatened people over the most ridiculous things. This isn't a new behavior for her. In the past, she threatened to call CPS on someone over an online disagreement. She's also bragged about doxing the person's address to me, and she's boasted about calling CPS on them for spending more time disagreeing with her than watching their own children. The person that she was threatening was a mother of a 14-year-old, so it wasn't like the mother was neglecting attention to an infant or toddler. So yeah guys, the post ends right there, but reading the post, I think it's definitely time for OP to just ghost this girl and block her from her life. And I really hope it doesn't get to the point where OP needs a restraining order, because some people are just that insane. Like guys, I've listened to enough true crime to know that sometimes people will stop at nothing to get what they want. And I know I say this often guys, but damn, just when you think people can't possibly demand crazier things, you get a post like this one where someone demands a body part as if it were a toy or something. Ridiculous. Okay, so I saw this today and I can't stop laughing. I was traveling in my city metro. Now, it wasn't that much crowded at the time, but all the seats were occupied. Still, you could freely stand without being spooned by a stranger. There was a kid sitting in the reserved seats. The ones for people with handicaps, pregnant women, old people, definitely not for moms of 2-year-olds. The kid was probably like 14 or 15 years old. I don't know, and he's the hero here. At one stop, the Karen comes in. She's got this cute little child who was trying to keep up with his mom's pace. The Karen instantly sees our hero sitting at the reserved seats and she just stares at him. Now I guess this was her way to make people automatically give up their seats or something. The kid didn't move though, and that probably irked her a lot I guess, because she moves towards the kid with heavy steps. She comes near him, she stops, and again she does the stare. But the kid doesn't budge, and then cue the screaming. Now if she didn't have the whole compartment's attention earlier, she definitely had it now. She starts berating the 14-year-old for sitting in a reserved seat and not giving it up to someone more deserving, like to a mother like herself, with a young son. And I don't know what her logic was, these seats aren't reserved for them anyways. She just keeps shouting and screaming, and she tries to get others' opinions on it. And for a while, people were actually on her side, thinking the boy was just a stubborn, I don't listen to anyone type of kid. And that's when the kid, out of nowhere, rolls the right side of his jeans up and detaches his artificial leg. He keeps it in front of Karen, almost thrusting it into her hands to get the point across, and the look on her face was priceless. She was mortified and embarrassed at the same time, and she just backs away silently. She also got off on the next stop, and I don't even think that was her stop. Guys, I love the story and the fact that the boy pulled the ultimate move to just shut that woman right up. And I really hope she learns from this, but probably not. So I'm an airline pilot, and for 3 days preceding the story, I had most certainly been earning my paycheck. 8 legs flown in ghastly weather. The last leg was coming up, and then a short commute home, and I've got 6 glorious days off. I had a change of airplane for the last leg, and upon arrival at the gates, there's 2 maintenance trucks and a Boeing company vehicle around the airplane. And this is never a good sign. So the plane is grounded, and my flight to Houston is cancelled. I'm now free to find my way home to Atlanta and proceed to go seat hunting. 4 hours later, in the evening, I find a seat on another carrier, non-stop to Atlanta. I get on the plane, settle into my aisle seat, and that's when the drama commences. Across the aisle is a young woman with 2 kids. One must have been about a month old, while the other was a dark-haired girl about 18 months, sweating, sobbing, and angry, and having a full-blown tantrum. The woman out of nowhere turns to me and shouts, "Here, hold my kid." Surprised, I said, excuse me? She huffs again and says, "Hold my kid, damn it." She then pushes the 18-month-old across the aisle into my lap. The tiny person was not happy about this, not at all. I've got her under the arms, and her little elbows are locked, pushing away from my chest. She's sobbing and hiccuping and miserable. Now I'm not happy about this either. I was tired, bone tired, and I just wanted to go home. So I look across the aisle, and the woman is partially covered with a blanket, apparently trying to nurse the infants, and she glares at me. I decide to ignore her and begin to gently rub the little one's back. She briefly stopped sobbing and stared at me for about 10 seconds before beginning her protest again. I continue with the gentle back rub and began talking softly to her. Nonsense really, but trying to sound comforting. Slowly she relaxes with her head down on my chest, still emitting the occasional sob, but better. Eventually she fell asleep. Tiny head tucked under my chin, soft breath against my neck, and that's when I thought, what an extraordinary thing. At this point, I didn't want the flight to end. 5 hours with a toddler on your chest might do wonders for your state of mind, but not so much for your physical comfort. About 150 miles from Atlanta, the flight starts to descend, and I stretch a bit and glance across the aisle. Mom's got the baby asleep in her arms, and there's tears running down her face. I then asked her, "Hey, are you okay?" The woman says, No, not really. I've been a jerk to you, and I'm sorry." At that, I gently smiled and said, "I'm okay. What's the wonderful little girl's name, please?" She responded and said, "Grace." I then tell the woman, "Thank you for letting me hold her. It meant a lot to me." At this point, Grace is beginning to wake up, and I'd expected that she'd wake in a stranger's lap and bolt across the aisle to Mama. Instead, she sat up in my lap, smiled hugely, and said, "Hi," and it melted my heart. She was in need of a diaper change, so I swapped the toddler for baby and chatted with Mom until we landed. Mom was indeed having a bad day. She was on her way to Atlanta to live with her parents as her husband just left her a few days earlier. And I'm sorry that I thought she was an entitled Karen. Stories like this truly warm my heart, guys. Like, what an unexpectedly wholesome ending. And I just want to say that despite all the fun and laughter we share by poking fun at entitled Karens on the channel, you never know when someone's having a bad day, and it's just the stress, anxiety, and anger controlling their emotions. And I'm glad OP was there for her, and I'm glad it worked out in the end, because we all know that some entitled people are just too darn entitled, and it could have ended very differently for OP if he was dealing with a real Karen. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy Karen stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/I don't work here lady, where a Karen thinks that she owns everybody because her husband's a high-ranking military man. It's such a funny story, it really is. So go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.